A warm welcome to Diski Talk with Luyolo. If you're tuning in for the very first time, I ask that you please do subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you've been a part of this journey, I hope you thoroughly enjoy this episode. So, on today's episode, I discuss all things Kaizer Chiefs as I look at their new signings, contract extensions, and then in the extra time segment, I do a tactical preview of how they might potentially line up going into the new season. The first segment is contract extensions. So 5 senior players have had their contracts extended in Itumeleng Khune, Ramahlwe Mphahlele, Bernard Parker, Lebogang Manyama, and Khama Billiat. So, with regards to these contract extensions, I will start with Itumeleng Khune. So, with Itumeleng Khune, I must say that I am thoroughly happy to see that his contract has been extended by virtue of the fact that he is a club legend, B, he's such an experienced footballer who I think still has quite a bit to offer with regards to his experience and with regards to his leadership skills. Maybe not as much on the playing side because we do know that he is coming to the end of his career. However, retaining him and keeping him within the fold and within the setup of Kaizer Chiefs is actually paramount going forward. Because when you do have a rebuild, you need a couple of figureheads who have been there, done that, got the t-shirt and experienced success with the club. So I am very happy that his contract has been extended because it would sadden me to see him retiring at any other club other than Kaizer Chiefs. So having then a look at Ramahlwe Mphahlele, with this contract extension, it's a bit of mixed emotions. However, I lean towards happy because if you look at Kaizer Chiefs in the right back position, they don't have much depth, in my opinion. Yes, they do have Ngezana, who can play as a right back, but in my opinion, he's best position is at centre back, and they also do have Njabulo Blom as well. But if anything were to happen to Reeve Frosler, then you have the cover of Ramahlwe Mphahlele. So I think it is a good contract extension. However, going into the future, I think that is a position that Kaizer Chiefs have to look at adding depth and also having a look at a younger player, who could challenge Reeve Frosler in the upcoming future. And then when we have a look at Bernard Parker, this is a contract extension that personally I don't advocate for, with all due respect to the great player that he is and what he's done and what he's achieved for both Kaizer Chiefs and Bafana Bafana. However, I just feel when it comes to the current landscape of what Kaizer Chiefs are trying to do, I just don't feel like he fits in. And often at times in the past season, one got the feeling that they were looking for a position for him because he didn't quite fit in. And at times you'd feel that in certain matches he would be the weakest link by virtue of the fact that he would be having a really bad game. However, because of his seniority and experience and the fact that he was wearing the armband, he wouldn't be substituted, which would do more bad than good for the team. So personally, I don't understand why they've extended his contract because I just don't feel like he fits in, and take nothing away from his energy, take nothing away from his desire and his hard work, because I'm not retiring him. I'm not saying he should retire, because if there's one aspect of his game that one can sit back and admire is his energy and work ethic that he's shown throughout the past season. So I just feel like at Kaizer Chiefs, at this current moment, I just don't feel like he fits into the team going forward. So then when we have a look at Lebogang Manyama, this is a player who, he's one of my favorite players. However, I must say that I'm saddened that we haven't really seen him at his best for Kaizer Chiefs. You know, he's performed in patches. He's had good spells, but then, you know, he'd also struggle with injury. So we just haven't seen him at his best. We haven't seen him replicate the performances that he once displayed at an Ajax Cape Town, at a Cape Town City. So I've been, you know, not impressed because he hasn't been consistent. And when he is consistent, we all know what he can do. So with regards to his extension, I'm actually happy that they've chosen to have the faith in him, because if we have to be honest, in the 2019-2020 season, he had a good season, you know, so that he did show us what he can do, and we all know what he can do if he's fully fit. And also taking into consideration the amount of offensive players we've now managed to sign, all those players in and around him and in the team, I think would predicate for Manyama to perform a lot better and a lot consistently if we do see him managing to stay fit. So moving on then to Khama Billiat. Very ecstatic when it comes to this extension, especially because he was linked to Al Ahly, and it was rumored that he was seeking a move away. However, this then just seals it that he's here to stay and his intentions are purely with the club. And I think this bodes well for the players that Kaizer Chiefs have just signed, because then when you have a look at the players, which I'm going to go into later on within this episode, those are very offensive players, very good players who can link up very well with with Khama Billiat. Look at me already getting excited to talk about Keagan Dolly. But those are players that can link up very well with Khama Billiat by virtue of the fact that they've played with him, and some are like-minded with regards to their style of play and their approach when it comes to the offensive side of football. So I would say then that Kaizer Chiefs have done well with certain extensions, and then with others, questionable, especially Bernard Parker's one. Before I do move on to the next segment, which is the new signings, do let me know, viewers, how do you feel about the contract extensions of those 5 players that I've just gone through? So moving on then to the next segment, which is new signings. Interesting. I am so excited because for so many years, Kaizer Chiefs have been trolled on social media for their transfer window with regards to the type of players they've acquired. They have been trolled because they don't break the bank, they don't go after exciting players. But this time around, I think there's a couple of names which will get everybody excited, you know, and which will also get the rivals a bit nervous, because these are very good footballers. So let's then start at the back and work our way up. So in goals, they have signed Brandon Peterson, which I think is a phenomenal signing, especially considering the fact that he is a well-developed keeper, first of all. Secondly, he has experience of the DStv Premiership, as he's played for Ajax Cape Town and he's played for Bidvest Wits. And what I like about him is that he will offer much needed competition when it comes to that number 1 jersey, especially considering how Bruce has grown in leaps and bounds. If anything, you need a player who will then challenge Bruce, and I think Brandon Peterson is a man fit for that, and I think that is a great signing. Moving on then to the defensive department, I will start in the centre-back department when we have a look at Austin Dube, who has recently joined Amakosi. Look, I'm very excited about this signing, especially considering the fact that he is a left-footed centre-half, and those who are Kaizer Chiefs loyal supporters know what happened the last time when they had a left-footed centre-half. But I am thoroughly excited about this signing because he offers great tactical versatility, because he is a player that can play in a back 3 on the left side. So, for example, if Kaizer Chiefs opted to go with a back 3, Austin Dube can play as the left-sided centre-back, where you'd have your libero in there and you'd have your right-sided centre-back. So he offers this, which is actually very good, especially considering the direction and shape that modern day football is taking. A lot of teams have transitioned to a back three, so I think he'd fit in very well. Also, the duality with his tactical versatility is that he's also well versed in playing in a back two, as he's very solid, especially as a player who can start play. He can open up, start play. Very good at also breaking the lines with regards to his passing, and also very strong and very good in the air. So this is a player that I think Kaizer Chiefs have needed. I think Kaizer Chiefs have struggled on the left-hand side with regards to their centre-back department. Moving on then to a player who will most likely partner him, and a player who I think is amongst the best, if not the best signing for Kaizer Chiefs this transfer window. The man who goes by Jabulo Roadblock Ngobo. I am thoroughly excited about this signing. I think this is a huge signing for Kaizer Chiefs, and I think this would have been a huge signing for any team within the DStv Premiership, especially when you consider the season that he's just had, defender of the season within the DStv Premiership, and also considering how skillful he is and how good he is on the ball as a centre-back. Very comfortable on the ball. You'll hardly ever see him making bad decisions on the ball. He's very, very intelligent. He knows which passes to pick. He breaks lines with ease. And he's got this signature move of his where you will find him maybe in that position where they play the ball back to him and he will shape up as if he's about to play the goalkeeper, and he will do a just nice 360, a nice pirouette where he gets back and he plays. So he is a man who can take us from a defensive transition and then into an offensive transition with just one trick, one pass. So that's what I love about him. He is as complete as they get when it comes to a centre back. So moving on then to the left back position. So this is a position where Kaizer Chiefs have opted to sign two left backs, which I question that decision by virtue of the fact that I think Kaizer Chiefs already have a couple of players within the squad that can play here. And they've also got young Thabo Mokoena, who is a part and parcel of the first team, who comes from the MDC side. And within the MDC as well, they do have players who are well versed to play as left-sided defensive players. So I just didn't feel the need to go and sign two left backs. Maybe one could have been better. However, when we do speak about the two signings in this position, the first goes by the name of Sfiso Hlanti, a player who was at Swallows this past season, a player who on his day can mark the very best in world football. Ask Mohamed Salah, he will tell you all about Sfiso Hlanti. He's got his number. But anyway, when we have a look at his skill set, so he's very comfortable on the ball. Technically, he's very good, and he can strike a ball from dead ball situations. So he is a very good left back. My only issue with him at times is that he tends to have a very laxy-daisy approach. So sometimes he lacks that sense of urgency where then we see him make certain bad decisions and where then you'll see him getting caught out defensively. So that is something that I would like for him to work on, especially considering the amount of pressure that comes with wearing the shirt of Kaizer Chiefs. And then when we then look at the other left back, goes by the name of Spusiso Mabiliso, who was playing at Amazulu. So this is a young left back who has experience when it comes to the junior international stage. He has represented the junior national teams and recently also played at the Olympics as part and parcel of that under-23 squad. So with regards to him, look, if required, he can go forward, he can whip crosses in, but I would say he's a bit more on the defensive side. So I like him because he's got age on his side, and he's still very coachable, and he hasn't picked up too many bad traits and too many bad habits. So you can still coach him into a quality fullback, So I'm I'm more or less happy with him. So if I had to pick one, I would have signed Spuso Mabiliso because he's got more time with regards to his career. And when you're looking at a rebuild, I tend to look at players who are either in their early 20s or mid 20s, so that we're looking at the next 5 to 7 years, potentially 10 years. So that's how I would have gone about picking in this department. However, when we move then into the midfield, this is also another area which I wasn't too impressed with by virtue of the fact that quality, secondly, the age. So I will then start with Patuchedza Nange, who has played at Black Leopards, then moved to Bidvest Wits, and then recently of Stellies. So with regards to Patuchedza Nange, very energetic player. He goes box to box, and he's a hard worker. And what I do like about him is that if he can find his rhythm and he finds momentum, he's a player that can become very consistent. And like I said, very hard-working player, which is what I think you need in modern-day football. And he's also tactically versatile by virtue of the fact that you can play him in a double pivot, if needs be, in just a 2-man midfield. You can play him in a 3-man midfield. So I think that he is more or less, I wouldn't say the greatest of signings, but I would say that it's a good signing by virtue of the fact that we haven't been able to get a defensive midfielder, which in my point of view, is the position that we should have prioritized. We should have prioritized getting a defensive midfielder as Kaizer Chiefs, a 6, somebody who will sit in front of the back 4 or a back 3 and be able to protect his defensive department. Somebody who's able to also start play from deep, So I think we should have prioritized someone like that. Someone in the mold of Umtetwa from Swallows. I think he would have been perfect. However, the next player we then speak of is Cole Alexander, another player who's similar to Patuchedza Nange with regards to his energy. He can then also play as a 6. However, it's not his position that he specializes in. I would say he's more of an 8, a box-to-box player. And what I like about him, that he has a lot more than Patuchedza Nange has, is his technical ability. He's a player that he can thread those passes, he can split defenses, but most importantly, he can get you a goal from midfield. He's got that quality to get you a goal from midfield. So moving on then, we then have a look at, on the left-hand side, Kgaugelo Sigota, who is a player that I think is very exciting. It's been a very long time since Kaizer Chiefs had a winger who's left-footed, skillful, and very exciting. A winger that can get fans off their seats and get them cheering. A winger that every time when he gets the ball, you just sort of feel like something is going to happen. So very excited with that signing. It's going to be interesting to see how does he fit into this Kaizer Chiefs side. And then, last but not least, we need that or drum roll. Ladies and gentlemen, the marquee signing for Kaizer Chiefs, Mr. Keagan Dolly. So this is a player who excites me. Every time he touches the ball, you get a feel-good feeling and you get that sense that this guy can make things happen. He is a complete playmaker in my own opinion by virtue of the fact that he can get you goals and he gets you the assists as well. So with regards to him coming back to South Africa, I do know that some people weren't too happy with this. Some even went as far as labeling it as a joke. However, I dispel that notion by virtue of the fact that in life, you get career projections and then you get career reality. So with regards to career projection, yes, we would have wanted Keagan Dolly to be playing at the highest level. Yes, we would have wanted him to be playing UEFA Champions League football. However, things didn't quite work out, hampered by injury as well throughout his time in France at Montpellier. but he does find himself now coming back home, coming to play for Kaizer Chiefs. He's 28, and I still believe that he's still got a lot to offer. You know, it's not the end. It's not the end of the world. But if he does get fit and he manages to find that rhythm and that consistency, this is a player who is going to surprise a lot of people. And this is a player who, man, we all know what Keagan Dolly can do. You know, we all know what he can do at his best. So I am very excited with regards to this signing. And I think it's a huge statement that Kaizer Chiefs has just sent out to the rest of the league. They're here, they want to compete, and they want to return to the glory days. So in the extra time segment, I'm now going to have a look at how they could potentially line up. So this is a tactical preview. However, before I do get into that, I'm going to start with my fantasy team and how I would like Kaizer Chiefs to line up. What would I do if I was the coach of the Glamour Boys? So in goals, I would have Bruce, as I think it's time for him to be number one now. I think his time has come. It's time that we throw him in and we trust him with that number one jersey. My two centre backs, I'd have Austin Dube as the left-sided centre-back. Yes, I would throw him right in. I do understand that when it comes to the big stage, he might lack experience. However, I think this is the perfect time because also considering his age, he doesn't have time. You know, it's now or never for him, and I would start him there. Alongside him, I would have Unjabulo Roadblock, and I think these two would make a very, very good centre-back partnership. Tactically very balanced by virtue of the fact that we've got a right-sided centre-half who's right-footed, a left-sided centre-half who's left-footed. So with regards to starting play from the back, they'd be well-versed at this. Bruce is also very comfortable on the ball. He could roll it out, he could play from the back, and they could get us going. So at left back, this is an unpopular opinion. However, you do know that on Disky Talk with Liolo, I love an unpopular opinion. And my unpopular opinion is that I would go with Happy Mashiane as my left back. And I say Happy Mashiane because in my own opinion, I think this is his natural position. I think this is where he's best at. And I say that because coming through the youth ranks of Kaizer Chiefs and in the reserve team, he did play as a left back, at times as a left wing back, or at times would see him occupying this sort of space in this left-hand channel as a midfielder, but I think he's very comfortable at left back. I say that because when you look at his technical skill set, very comfortable on the ball and very good at whipping crosses in, also very good at a dead piece, at a dead ball situation. So I think he's a player who's well versed at attacking the space as opposed to starting him as a part of a front three where he has to beat men 1v1. I don't think that's his best trait, but also from a defensive perspective, he's also got speed, so he can deal with 1v1 situation defensively as opposed to him offensively having to beat players 1v1. So I think from deep areas, he'd be very good because he could break lines. And I'm going to go into how I would deploy him as a left back when we then go into a deeper analysis of how I would want them to shape up offensively in the opponent's half. Then going to right back, I would go with Reeve Frosler as the right back. Yes, I do understand and I will concede that he's not the best offensively. However, I think because he is a young player, I still think that he can be coached, you know, and also considering how I would like to impose myself on certain teams and why I would start him there, I will go into depth as to what I would do with my two fullbacks and the relationship that they would have with their wingers. I will go into depth with regards to that. But I like him here. He's also very similar to a Mashiane, very comfortable on the ball, technically second to none when it comes to his delivery and his final ball. I think this is a player who will keep growing, and I think he's a player that going into the future we might see him further up the pitch, maybe playing as a midfielder, maybe playing as an attacking midfielder, but I do see him developing into an offensive gem of a footballer because I think that's what he's naturally good at. Then that is my back four. So I'd have a back four. In midfield, I'd have a midfield three. So yet again, unpopular picks. So in my midfield three, I'd go with Njabulo Blom as my number 6 as a sitter. Yes, I do concede that he is a player who's growing. He is a player who's learning his trade. But synonymous to a Frosler, synonymous to a Mashiane, he is a player who is still developing. He is a player who can learn, and I think is a player who can grow in this position. I've seen enough from him in this position to say that I think that going forward, that could be his best position. So I would have him in there. As my 2 number 8s, I'd have Itumeleng Khune as on the left side to occupy the left half space. I would have Given Tiberi, yes, Manando. I would have him on the right-hand side to occupy the right half space. So the reason why I like these 2 players and the reason why I'd go with the Academy boys, this would be synonymous to what Barcelona did when they had Busquets, Xavi and Iniesta. Viewers at home, I'm not comparing the 3 of them. I'm not saying they like them. I'm not saying they'll be better than them. However, with regards to their trajectory, with regards to their upbringing through the academy and their transition into first team football, it would be synonymous. Bar the fact that Given Tiberi did go out on loan. However, the transition would be synonymous to that. So I like them because you got a midfield 3 of ball players. You got a midfield 3 of intelligent players who know how to read the game, you know. So I think these are 3 players who can grow in midfield and become complete midfielders with regards to their technical skill set and their tactical acumen. Also, when you consider their duties within the side. So moving on then along. So this is where it gets interesting, because when it comes to my offensive approach, it would be quite interesting. So I would go with the false 9. My false 9, I would go with Khama Billiat as a false 9. I think this is a player who plays his best football off the cuff when he doesn't have too much responsibility. And the players then to complement him, I would have Khaukhelo Sikhota coming off the left. He does love hugging the touchline on the left, trying to beat players coming in, can deliver across, can come in, can go to the right, cut in. On the right-hand side, as my playmaker, I would then have Keagan Dolly. And the reason why I'd have him is because I think when it comes to playmaking, he is one of the best footballers we have in South Africa when he is on song and when he's fully fit. And he's a player that can get you the goals. So when occupying these half spaces, looking to come in, I think then he could be very dangerous. And what we could see is on the right-hand side with regards to this half space, you could see sometimes an overload and combination play between Ngobo and the Keagan Dolly, and can also occupy zone 14. Sometimes then see Ngobo go there. So that is a player who's tactically flexible. That is a player who is well-rounded with regards to his offensive approach. Another approach that I would have is I would then go with a number 9. I would either go with Castro or I would go with Nukovic as a number 9, have Billiat coming off the left, have Keagan Dolly coming off the right. So that is how I would go with Kaizer Chiefs if the owners fell into my hands and if I was the coach. So I did mention that I would have a look at them in the opponent's half, and this is what how I would want to have them in the opponent's half. So we'd have, and my team would be a ball playing side. I believe in a 4-3-3 that would transition into a 3-4-3 at times. I believe in a ball playing system which predicates for consistency when it comes to breaking the lines, attacking certain channels, occupying and overloading the half spaces and zone 14 as well, and then looking to get some of our best players in on goal by virtue of cutbacks, by virtue of them cutting in. So that is how I would look at it. So how then I would have a look at it is that I would want them. So I did mention the 2 fullbacks and what I would do with the fullbacks. So I will start with the fullbacks. You'll have your two center backs. Up there, you have Blom just in there. You have your two number 8s. So yes, number 8s, sometimes you have Ngobo can be on this side. You can have Given Tibeti go that side. But most likely, Ngobo does like to occupy the left-sided half space. But as the game progresses, because they are creative players, like I did mention earlier on, you can have Ngobo on this side as well, linking up play. You can have Given Tibeti on this side as well. However, the shape that I would like to adopt in the opposition's half would be this. So Sikhota would hug the left-hand side. You'd have Itumeleng Khune in there. You'd have Keagan Dolly a lot closer to the striker, which would be Khama Billiat in this case. And then with Reeve Frosler, this is what I explained with the fullbacks. I would have him high and wide because this is what he likes doing and that's what he's good at. However, the difference then on the left-hand side is that with Happy Mashane, I would invert him. So he would come in a lot closer. And the reason why I would invert him is because it would complement a Sikhota. Sikhota likes hugging the left-hand channel, and he loves staying on the line, and he loves beating his man, going one-on-one with him. He loves occupying this space. And then with Mashiane, who I think is very good from deep and who I think can progress the ball really well from deep areas, who can also pick a pass, who's also good at crossing. I think then him coming into this position where at times he will be tucked in, at times you could see him even tucking into the midfield. I know in South Africa, we're not as advanced as of yet, but if you can think of Zinchenko at Manchester City, that is what I would do with Mashiane, having him coming in. And then you've got Ngobo occupying the half space, and you got Keagan Dolly in there. On the right-hand side, I would have Given Tibeti here. And with Given Tibeti in this space, which is almost on the same line as a Mashiane, where you have him as an inverted, sort of an inverted fullback, and sometimes as an 8, as a midfielder in here, is that the duality with this, he can get onto the ball, dictate terms and play. And then, if needs be, he can always cover Reeve Frosler. And I must mention how versatile he is. Coming up through the youth ranks at Kaizer Chiefs, he did play as a right back in the MDC one of the seasons. And he is a player who can play multiple positions. He reads the game very well. So that is what I would look to do. And whenever we do then lose the ball, you're looking at Mashiane coming in. You're looking at Given Tibeti coming in. So then you're sort of looking at this defensive block, which then gives us enough time for the rest of the players to drop. That's what I would personally do. However, let's move on then to reality, because that was my fantasy team. Let's have a look at what Stuart Baxter could potentially do. So having then a look at what Stuart Baxter could potentially do, I'm going to have a look at potentially 2 or 3 formations, and let's see what he could potentially do. So what I think Stuart Baxter could do, I'll start with a 4-2-3-1, and in the midfield, this is subject to them getting a defensive midfielder. If they don't get a defensive midfielder, then they're going to do what I think they're going to do going into this. So in goals, I think it'll still be Bruce. You know, in goals could be Bruce, could be Peterson, but I think it would be Bruce in goals. Or it could be Akpe, you know, if they do end up keeping him. Could be either or with regards to that. And then when we have a look at left back, it's going to be Sfiso Hlanti by virtue of the fact that he's experienced, A. Secondly, he did play under Stuart Baxter at the AFCON tournament where he did really well against Egypt. And then 2 centre-backs, I think Jabulo Ngobo will come in, but at left side at centre-back, I think you'll go with Cardoso. By virtue of the fact that he's more of a big game player, more experienced than Austin Dube. And then at right back, this is also another interesting one. according to the final of the CAF Champions League, he went with Ramahlwe Mphahlele. So he could go with Mphahlele or he could go with Frosler. I think it's a 50-50 on that one. And then where it gets interesting in the midfield, if Kaizer Chiefs don't manage to sign a defensive midfielder because the window is still open, I think they'll go with the double pivot of Patu Tshezanange and Cole Alexander. And the reason why I say this is because I think then they will be able to protect that back four. And with Stuart Baxter, he is, in my opinion, I would say he leans a lot more towards the tactically safe side with regards to how he sets up his teams. So I think you'd then go with a double pivot. And then having a look at the offensive side. So even here, there could be multiple options. Guys, this is what I think. In the comment section, like I always mention, please do let me know what you think he would do. I've now got Stuart Baxter's cap on, and I'm now trying to figure out what could he potentially do with this Kaizer Chiefs side. So we then have a look at this position as a second striker, if you want to call it, as an attacking midfielder. I think in here, he could go with Itumeleng Khune, or he could go with Manyama in here. And then on the left-hand side, Billiat. That's where I think he'll start. That's where he's very good at coming off the left-hand side and then coming in. And then on the right-hand side, Keagan Dolly. And then up front, Nukovic or Castro. I think that's how Stuart Baxter could potentially be looking at things as he has worked with a couple of these players before, and his approach is more or less in alignment with this lineup. And that's by virtue of everybody being fit, of course. So I'm talking about it from a perspective of everybody being fit. So then also he could go with a back three. So when we're then looking at a back three, so I think if he does then go with a back three, you could have then maybe then the inclusion of Austin Dube in there as the left-sided. Then you could have Jabulo Ngobo, roadblock, playing as the libero, as he's very comfortable on the ball, and I think he'd do an exceptional job at that. And then as the right-sided, he could go with Cardoso. If not Cardoso, it could be a Ramahlwe Mphahlele, so that would then complement a Frosler going forward, because defensively I did mention that he's not the strongest. So it could then be potentially you're looking at a back three of an Austin Dube this side. If not Austin Dube, a Cardoso. Jabulo Ngobo, definitely. At the right side, you're looking at Ramahlwe Mphahlele or a Cardoso if Austin Dube does start on this side. And then in midfield, you still same double pivot of Cole Alexander and Patu Tshezanange. The wing backs then being Siso Hlanti, which then will aid him to get a lot further forward, which is what he's comfortable with. On the right side, Frosler, which is very comfortable with. And then your inverted forwards, you have Khama Billiat, you have your Keagan Dolly, and then you'll have your Nukovic. That's how I think he might potentially go when we're looking at a 3-4-3 system, or if you want to make it a 3-5-2, you could go with Billiat and Nukovic. You can have Dolly as the 10, or you could even, if you want to go with the false 9, you sacrifice Nukovic. Then you have Ngobo coming in as a 10. You got Dolly, you got Billiat. If you want to go with mobility up front, that's how I potentially think he might go with things. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the very end of a special episode where I discussed all things Kaizer Chiefs. Do let me know in the comments section, what do you make of each segment? So from the contract extensions to the new signings and the tactical preview of how Stuart Baxter might set up. Also, don't be shy. Do comment on my fantasy team. What would be your fantasy team? Thank you for tuning in to yet another special episode of Diski Talk with Luyolo. Signing out.